this is Shayla with Spiritually Single. I want to welcome you to the Spiritually Single channel. This is our launch, our first video, and I'm so excited. I just want to share with you an encouraging message that the Lord placed in my heart, especially for you. During my alone time with the Lord, I was reading a passage in 1 Samuel, and God placed it in my heart to share it with you. It's 1 Samuel 4, 6 through 8. What's going on, the Philistines asked. What's all this shouting about in the Hebrew camp? When they were told it was because the ark of the Lord had arrived, they panicked. The gods have come into their camp, they cried. This is a disaster. We have never had to face anything like this before. Help! Who can save us from these mighty gods of Israel? They are the same gods who destroyed the Egyptians with plagues when Israel was in the wilderness. Fight as never before, Philistines. If you don't, we will become the Hebrew slaves, just as they have been ours. Stand up like men and fight. So the Philistines fought desperately, and Israel was defeated again. The slaughter was great. 30,000 Israelite soldiers died that day. The survivors turned and fled to their tents. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and read the whole story. I'm not going to get into the whole story because I want to focus on this one passage. Let me explain what's happening in what I just read. This took place during the time of King Saul, and the Philistines were getting ready to battle the Israelites. But while they were in the interim, they hear the Israelites chanting and screaming and yelling. They were like celebrating. And what the Israelites were basically celebrating was that the Ark of the Lord was taken into their camp. And so they were happy because God was within them. And so when the Philistines heard the chanting and the celebrating, they realized what happened. And they were like, the Ark of the Lord is in their camp. And so they freaked out. They were panicking. And the reason that they were panicking is because they knew what the Israelite God had done in the past. They knew what the Hebrew God was capable of. They knew that the God of the Jews was a mighty God. They were aware of all the plagues that he had sent to the Egyptians. They were aware of, everything they had, that they had heard, and they believed that the God of the Jews had done for them. So they knew that they were mighty people when God was with them. As I read this passage, it just all of a sudden came to me, and I was like, oh my goodness, how many times do we do this? It's been almost 3,000 years since that, and we are still doing the same things that the Israelites, did back then. And that is doubt who is in our camp. How many times have we been confronted by an impossible situation in our daily life? And the first thing that happens is we start to doubt. Anxiousness sets in. And then before you know it, that weakens us. And our focus, we totally lose focus. And we end up focusing on our problem instead of, that what is impossible for man is possible for God. Now, the enemy of our soul, him on the other hand, he knows exactly who God is. He knows what God is capable of. He knows what we're capable of because he knows that God resides within us. And so since he knows what we're capable of, when he attacks us, he comes in full force, thinking that we're going to fight back probably, but he's weakened us with thoughts. He's weakened us with doubt. He's weakened us with fear. And so by the time that happens, the enemy has the upper hand. So let me give you an example of how this happens to us in our daily lives, specifically for singles. Okay, you're single, you're ready to settle down, and all of a sudden you start looking around you and you're like, okay, I don't see any guys in my church that I'm interested in. They're nice guys, but there's nobody that I would, want to be seeing seriously. You look at work, at school, and you're like, I don't know any Christian guys. And I've seen it in the comment section on Spiritually Single, where women are like, where are these guys? Where are these godly men that you always post about? And I get it, I get it, that maybe in your circle, there isn't any godly men, that you might want to have a relationship, courtship, or settle down with. And so you start worrying, because as soon as the doubt and the worry starts in, it kicks in. It's like you activate the enemy. It's like you're giving the enemy a foothold, a step in the door. And so you start to worry, you get anxious. He makes things worse by putting things in your head, saying you're never going to find a godly man. God isn't going to find somebody for you. So he fills your head with doubt, and then he starts putting thoughts in your head telling you to go out with that guy at work. It doesn't matter if he's not a believer. Oh, you can change him eventually. And this happens to guys as well. I'm not talking just to women. And so when you pay attention to this and you focus to this, it leads you down a path that will lead you to destruction. Another example is you're divorced. You're divorced, no prospects in sight. This time around, you think, oh my goodness, this time around I have kids. I'm not as young as I used to be. And so, boom, you let the enemy know that you're doubting, and then he makes things worse by putting thoughts into your head. He starts telling you, nobody's going to want you with your baggage, which that's a big lie because kids are never baggage. He starts putting thoughts in your head that you're not as young as you used to be. Things aren't where they should be anymore. And so you start doubting that God is powerful enough to bring a man into your life. And so that sets you down a path for destruction as well, because you start losing faith, you start losing hope, and then bitterness sets in. And all of these are lies. They're lies because you need to remember who is in your camp. The same God that parted the Red Sea is positioning things in your favor. So you're single and you don't click with anybody. Well, and there's nobody that you like in your circle. Well, instead of worrying, remember who goes before you. Remember that for God, it's not impossible to bring one or two guys in your circle. I mean, that you will cross paths with, because there's nothing impossible for him. What, you think it's impossible for him to bring several guys that you can actually choose from? And this goes for men as well. And if you're divorced, what, you think it's impossible for God to bring a godly man into your life that could be a spiritual leader in your home and take your kids as his own? There is nothing impossible for the Lord. Remember that this is the God who defeated and put to shame the Egyptian gods. This is the God that raised Lazarus from the dead. There is nothing he can't do. And so the way that we can strengthen our faith so that when we're faced with these things that happen to us on a daily basis is you need to get into the Word. You need to read up. You need to read the Word daily so that his Word eventually becomes his voice. Because that's basically what the Bible is. It's God speaking to us, instructing us, guiding us, comforting us, filling us. And so if these things are happening to you and you are not read up, you're going to be caught weak. And so you're faced with this situation, you're going to forget who's in your camp. Just like the Israelite, you're going to forget who is in your camp. And what's going to happen is that the enemy is going to have the upper hand. And so I encourage you to read the Word. Get into the Word so that you can learn God's character. There's nothing like knowing God's character, because once you know who God is, you know what he's capable of. You know what he's done for you. So it's important for you to know God's promises. There's so many promises in the Word that he left for us, that he left for you. Promises that he's waiting to fulfill in your life. But you need to access those promises. We tend to put God in a box and we limit him. We limit his power. But God has no limits. His power goes beyond what we could ever fathom. That is why, like I said, it's important to read the Word. Not only read the Word, but memorize his Word. So that when you're caught in this situation, you could just say it by heart. And while you're saying it, believe it. And while you're saying it, it activates your faith. There's a couple verses that I love that, I had to learn by heart. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord will personally go ahead of you. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, of power and love. I can do all things through Christ who gives me the strength. Greater is he who is within me than he who is in the world. And so when you learn these Bible verses and you're caught in a situation, you could say them out loud. I've done it. I sometimes have to say it over and over again until I believe it, until they become truth in my life. There is power in the Word of God. And so if you need to say it out loud, say it out loud. Because when you say it out loud, you are putting that into, you're actually activating the Word of God in your life. And the enemy will flee. We need to allow that truth to remind us every day who is in our camp. A mighty, mighty God who goes before you and behind you. So you're covered. You're covered. See, you need to understand that you belong to God. Therefore, the victory is already yours. I hope that this word really encourages you. I pray that it helps you deal with your singleness, that it helps you deal with the doubt that comes with a failed marriage and having to do singleness all over again, this time with different issues in life. I really hope that this helps you get into the Word and really use God's promises to strengthen you and to activate your faith. I look forward to seeing you next Monday. I will try to post every Monday. So I look forward to seeing you next Monday. Remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the videos that are uploaded. And thank you so much for making me a part of your life. Thank you so much for allowing me to serve you and encourage your life.